Hey, this is Cliff from the Blue Ocean team. A few weeks ago, the team got together and we hacked on the code for a while together. One of the things that I was working on was trying to make the UI update in real time in as many places as possible so that the data that you're looking at is always fresh and you're never wondering whether your build has actually finished in the background while you're off getting coffee. Some of the things specifically that I worked on this screen here was getting these little relative date completed indicators here, basically, to update in real time as time is lapsing. So we'll just speed this up a little bit so you can see this quickly here. So as you can see, these will update, like I said, in real time without having to refresh your browser page and learn that the thing that looked like it happened 2 minutes ago actually happened 2 hours ago. The code for this actually was fairly straightforward. Basically built a React component here, which has a very simple render method. It's really just taking the current time and based on a date that's stored in the state, just using some of the moment libraries to show, display that relative date and show some other information in the title and tooltip and that sort of thing. Really, again, code here isn't real crazy or straightforward. We're just doing some date validation, and then if we've enabled the live update property on this component, it'll just use setInterval to periodically reforce an update, reforce a render of the control, which will give us a new value for now, obviously at some point in the future, and we'll adjust the relative date accordingly. One of the things that I worked on was making sure that the activity tab here is always reflective of the jobs that are actually running or queued and what their status is. So right now I'll bounce over to the classic UI and just go ahead and kick off one of these builds here. As you can see, the row automatically gets added here. Didn't have to press refresh. It's just updating in real time. Under the hood, this is using a new feature called server-side events. One of my colleagues, Tom, has put a lot of work into that. And we're basically getting events pushed to us that are telling us when certain jobs get queued or start or they finish. And so that's basically updating a Redux store in the background, which is causing a re-render of the page with the new data here. In addition, some of the elements on the screen that I worked on as well was this little status indicator here. Some of this had already been built by one of the other team members, Josh, but basically wrapped one of the components that he had already built, and again added some sort of similar kind of timer code that I can show you in a second, that's going ahead and updating this in real time. And since this job has been run before, we've actually got a estimated duration of the build, so we can sort of fill in this little progress indicator based on approximately how long we think it's going to take. And when we receive the next server-side event, again, the update, will update the UI and reflect the fact that the job has either completed or failed. Similarly, this little duration indicator here, as you may have noticed, will also sort of tick up in real time. As the build is progressing, you can see there, kind of just jumped up to 2 minutes. And if we sit here and wait just a few more seconds, we should go ahead and get this thing fully updated and successful. And there you go, build completed just a few seconds ago with a duration of about 2 minutes. So I guess with that said, I'll bounce over here and show a little more of some of the relevant code. So time duration is this little UI component right here. This is actually very similar to readable date. Basically, again, has a real simple render method that's just taking in a number of milliseconds that have elapsed and using again another just moment utility here called humanize that gives us that nice little human readable output. This is just some formatting for a tooltip, but we're basically just spitting out a pretty simple little span tag here. And then, similarly, if our live update, flag is set and we've got, some millis, some duration that's already elapsed on this, we'll fire update time, on a certain interval and update, the state of our component, which obviously, causes a re-render to occur, and basically takes any value that was already passed into this component as a prop and adds any time that has elapsed, which we're tracking in the state, and ticking that up based on the duration of the little timer there. Also worked on the live status indicator. This is a nice example of what the React community typically calls using higher order components, or really just using component composition. So rather than trying to extend a component and add some behavior into it, you just wrap it, and you're almost sort of decorating that new behavior inside of it. So Josh had built this status indicator component, which is the element that you see here on the left side that's indicating, like success or failure, queued, or some of the other states. You didn't want to overcomplicate this status indicator component that, again, is showing either the status or it's showing the spinner, for elements that are kind of, builds, I should say, that are currently, like in progress and, filling up with their percent complete. So basically built, live status indicator, which includes all of the logic, again, very similar from these other two components, that, is using send interval, and updating progress, basically, calling, draw progress, or kind of setting it into an indeterminate state if we actually kind of exceed our estimated percentage of around 100. And then this again is just, calling set state here when we actually want to draw progress, adding, a little bit of time on, or percentage on here, and just using request animation frame, kind of in a loop, if you will, to kind of keep drawing the progress out. So not a huge amount of logic here, but it was kind of nice that we could really just wrap status indicator by passing props into it, and then tracking the actual percent complete in state that's sort of wrapping this. So one of the last things we can show here is just kicking off a job here and getting it running, and then go ahead and clicking through to the detail screen here. Thor has been doing some really awesome work here, both with basically giving us real-time console output that's displaying in these sections below. And this is a component I know that Josh put a huge amount of time into to be able to render sort of all the different steps with branching and so forth, and kind of showing their progress, all updating in real time. I worked on some of the code here in the header. Again, really actually quite similar to what you saw on the previous screen, just kind of sort of a reskinning and repurposing of some of those components. Just a different state here to the status indicator. Because we're using SVG under the hood, really easy just to kind of scale this stuff up and make it fill the available space. And then similarly, we've got duration and the kind of time since completion indicators here that will also update in real time as the build progresses. So we'll just sit here and fast forward through that so you can see that. Yeah, and there's the detail page. Haven't updated to reflect the fact that the build succeeded. You can see that it ran for about 2 minutes and just finished a few seconds ago. So that's what I worked on. Hope you guys enjoyed seeing it.